Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, coming at you with another fantastic guest tonight, as usual. And as usual, I also want to shout out to some of my previous guests that have been joining me. Nancy Wallace from Nancy's Zone in Oklahoma. That was a great interview. I met Nancy while I was interviewing Ron Durbin from Oklahoma, and she left some great comments on that show, and I was super happy to have Nancy on the other day. Another great show with Rob Scur. If you haven't listened to the new album Water, that's out on all platforms now, and if you can't find it, I'd be happy to hook you up with that. We got Charles McGowan from Sambo Creek Filtration. They've got a hash washing company. They make equipment to wash hash. We got Joseph Calderon from Grateful Valley Farm. Another great interview there. Chris Ferrone from the Talking Joints Memo in Massachusetts. Paula Collins in New York. Summer Westerber from the Kairos Insurance Group. Just a great lineup of guests, in my opinion. And coming up, I've got another great bunch of guests tomorrow. I've got Box Guts, local MC here, who I really dig his style. On Thursday, I've got Stephen Houghton, who's a New York cultivator. On Friday, I've got Nate Remness, who's from the Maiden Voyage crew, the Jar of Tease Love crew, another MC here that I'm super excited to have on. And then on Sunday, on the 28th, I've got Dr. Carl Craig coming on. So a lot of great stuff. And then we'll do one more. On Tuesday, the 30th, I've got Brad Racino coming back from New York Cannabis Insider, who, in my opinion, is one of the top journalists in the country. And that's all I'm going to do there. And today, my guest tonight, you might have seen a couple of our other interviews. I've had her on twice before, and I thought we've had some great discussions. And tonight, we'll just go wham, bam. Larisa Bolivar back on the show. Larisa, thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Do you, you already did a 5-minute life story. Do you want to do one again? Because it's been a minute since you've been on.
Sure. 5-minute life story. Let's see.
I'm gonna put you in the big box there. There you go.
In the big box. Okay. Thanks. Well, I can start off by saying I must be brave to be on a podcast with having even put any makeup on. But that's just kind of the history of my tenure in the cannabis space now, 20 plus years on the front lines and 30 plus years consuming. And there's just a lot to say, but I've been in the space for, like I said, 20 plus years. I am a historically recognized pioneer of the Colorado cannabis industry. In 2015, I received my master's in public policy from the Regis University, which is a Jesuit school in Denver, a private Jesuit school, where I concentrated on cannabis policy reform. I started there in 2013, right at the onset of adult use. And, I just wanted to understand the evolution of cannabis policy from a historical standpoint, and also from a business and equity standpoint. I was part of the Denver 420 rally, the original rally. Right now, it's a festival that's run by a completely different group. It was originally a political rally, and we were forced to become a festival. But it was through that I started my cannabis activism. It was that organization that actually helped get Amendment 20 passed in Colorado. And originally, there was a whole group of people involved in legalization that were mainly the people who were responsible for creating the market itself. And then when the first set of regulations came about in Colorado for medical marijuana, that shut out a lot of people. And then adult use kind of solidified that with giving preferential treatment to existing operators on the medical side to become adult use operators, which, essentially shut out everyone that kind of fought for legalization. And so I kind of made that my subject matter for the, last, I would say, 5 years since graduating. 5 years. Well, no, now it's going on, 9 years. I don't even want to look at it, or 10 years.
Will you,
So anyhow,
will you tell us? Can I cut you off for a second?
yeah,
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but will you
no,
tell
you're
us what
fine.
Amendment 20 is, please?
Okay, so Amendment 20 was the medical marijuana bill. It was a constitutional amendment that passed in Colorado in 2000 and enacted in 2001. And that basically enabled the use of medical marijuana for qualifying conditions, which were, the gamut of what you usually see: cancer, HIV, cachexia, gastrointestinal issues. And then in 2017, I helped get PTSD added onto the medical marijuana registry. But that is my background and how I got involved in cannabis. I was a medical marijuana caregiver, and I launched the Colorado Compassion Club in the early 2000s, which is recognized in Colorado as one of the first dispensaries. Some argue even the first. We actually launched out of a church and then moved into a storefront and then got our sales license and just kind of followed a path without any regulations. And I mean, I guess it's safe to say we were the reason why people rushed to put in regulations. When Amendment 20 passed, there was no guidelines as to how consumers can obtain cannabis, from where, from whom. It was just kind of a free for all. Basically, if you were a person with a medical condition that was a qualifying condition, you could procure marijuana from anybody, anywhere, and that legalized that transaction. Even on the other end, the vendor, whoever's distributing cannabis, is actually engaging in illegal um, exchange. So, with so much ambiguity, obviously there was a push to create regulations that opened up the door for a lot of powerful people to come into Colorado, marijuana landscape, to start shifting it towards adult use. And basically, adult use was piggybacked off of medical marijuana. And that caused a lot of problems that we still see today.
What do you mean by that, Larissa, when you say adult use was piggybacked off of medical marijuana? What do you mean by that? Would you care to dig into that at all?
Sure. So when medical marijuana was passed, and especially after it was enacted, not just in California, but in Colorado, and then it started moving forward in other states, it primed voters for voting for adult use. After medical marijuana passed, people saw that the sky didn't fall. People weren't like turning to heroin, killing each other because they were suddenly legal medical marijuana patients. And so therefore it made adult use more palatable for the general public, um, to support it. And there were other strategies deployed to get adult use passed, um, and specifically in Colorado, when President Obama was running for election, that drove a lot of voters forward. But the I would say the strategy was, well, we already have all these supporters for medical, and we showed them that everything is still running safely for the most part, and that what we really need to make it better would be, to create a licensing and regulatory structure around it. And so with that, they created medical marijuana regulations. And then, so for a few years, that seemed to work. And then they were able to say, hey, we have all these businesses that are, legally participating in medical marijuana. The sky hasn't fallen with all these medical users. We sure can use the tax dollars from marijuana sales. So let's just roll over all these medical patients into a legal adult use market. We'll create a mantra that all use is medical. And then this way, everybody can have their marijuana. But, this also neglected a large group of people. And that is basically the people that were actually using it medicinally. They're forced into a market to pay 20 or more percent sale, in total taxes, depending on what state you're in. I know here in Trinidad, Colorado, and also municipality, really, I pay 25% in taxes. Some municipalities can be up to 30%, but it's a lot. Like, you're, spending basically lunch money in taxes when you buy an eighth. And when you're dealing with medical issues, you
Oh, lost you there for a minute, Larissa. Uh-oh. Your video's freezing up. Let's see if this comes back. Larissa, if you can still hear me, your video is freezing up. The audio has frozen up as well. I'm going to give it a minute or two here to come back. I'm also going to send you a text message right now. Oh, sorry about that, guys. We're going to wait for Larissa to come back here. Can't really do anything about the tech problems. I'm still trying to figure out how to make every connection perfect. But you know, in time, I'll riff. And I really hope Larissa comes back here because, you know, this is going to be a great conversation. But I do have some other great guests coming up. You know, tomorrow going to be Box Guts. If you guys are hip hop fans or you like graffiti or anything like that, Box is another great artist spotlight that I'm going to be doing. And then Thursday, I'm going to have a root canal. And then I'm going to have Stephen Houghton on the show. And Stephen is a grower from New York. I don't know if you guys saw the interview I did with Joseph Calderon from the Cannabis Farmers Alliance. But I believe Stephen's a member of that, and he'll be coming on the show as well. And then the next day, I'm going to go to the State House to check out some of this PFAS coalition stuff. I believe one of my previous guests, Marguerite Edelman, will be at the State House on Friday in room 28 with the PFAS coalition, talking about water quality issues here in Vermont, which is something that I think is going to be one of the most important issues of our lifetime here. And especially if you have kids or you have grandkids. Here's Larissa again. Let's see if we can bring Larissa back. Hey, Larissa, are you back? Are you back?
I can't hear you. This is very strange.
You can't hear me. Okay. I got video from you. I was riffing while you were gone. Yeah. You know, that's pretty choppy there. If you got problems with the audio here, you know, I could send you another invite too if you want. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear me or not. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Yeah.
Oh.
The video's still working. Well, she's trying to sort it out. I do have Stephen Howell coming on Thursday. New York Cultivator. On Friday, I've got Nate Renmus from the Maiden Voyage crew. Ethan Kramer. Kramer? I think it's Kramer. Yeah. And then Sunday, I got
there you are.
Hey, Larissa, are you back?
I'm back. That was very weird. Like my phone overheated and then just shut down. And then
we got one link.
My internet cut out on my laptop. All at the same time.
Okay. We got one LinkedIn user that said, Caleb, your audio is good for me. And Larissa, you're back. So cool. I was just riffing there for a minute. I was hoping we'd get you back.
Okay.
We was just getting, yeah, cool. And I don't remember where exactly we were at. We're talking about the medical marijuana as it like translates to the adult use.
Yes.
And I'd like to chime in. Yeah, and I'd like to chime in with a comment that I've seen from states around the country, and I believe you touched on this briefly, is that as soon as the medical sort of takes over, or sorry, as soon as the adult use takes over from the medical, it seems like every state starts with the medical, and then they come with the adult use, and that just equals maybe more tax revenue for the state.
Yes. And that's literally the bottom line. The states are like, hey, we'll let you keep this party going, but we want a piece of the pie too. And that's literally what happened. And so they rolled all these medical patients into the tax and regulate model that, has to pay for itself. So the licensing, all of it, all of these commissions and regulatory bodies that were created in each state has to pay for itself. That was one of the conditions that were made with the state leaders, lawmakers in particular. And so that's just what happened. And basically, they got a lot of buy in from either existing medical marijuana activists, and then there are activists like me who weren't like too thrilled on the idea of, having to spend so much money. I mean, I get it. I get the movement. I want marijuana to be legal. Don't get me wrong. But I risked my life specifically for people who were sick and broke and using marijuana as their medicine. And I saw this as um, kind of like lacking in integrity with making sure that the communities that we're supposed to be supporting with these legalization efforts, to uphold the integrity that wasn't even upheld, not only with medical marijuana patients when they were kind of left to come up with their own um, means to find medical marijuana, or some can still participate in the programs. I mean, there are dispensaries that do both, and there's some that only cater to medical marijuana, but there was a large push. There's more product availability for the recreational side. And that was kind of, a bad enough affront to the medical marijuana patients. But then when adult use was passed, they shut out the people who created the market itself. And they created these high, barriers to entry that shut people out. And it wasn't just someone having a felony on their record. That's just the easy argument. It's the simple fact that they're requiring people to spend millions of dollars to apply for and launch a marijuana business, which in of itself is a huge racket. And yet, in order for the program to sustain itself, we're kind of stuck in this position, unfortunately. So much so, I mean, the Justice Department advises on marijuana policy. They seem to want these strict regulations. There seems to be like this benchmark that's set that if you're a millionaire and you have access to liquid capital, then suddenly you deserve to be in the marijuana space. But it neglected to account for the consumers themselves, and of course small businesses or people who were trying to transition from the illicit market into a regulated market, who voted in good faith for these laws thinking that they were creating a pathway to legal ownership for themselves. So now you have all this, you've got legalization and happening in the majority of states, whether it's medical or recreational. Unfortunately, it's left out a lot of people participating,
Mm.
unless you just want to go buy licensed taxed marijuana, and then that's a whole other conversation on quality.
Comment there from Badu Naveen. Hey, oh, madam, good morning from India. Hey, cool. If you're watching from India right now, thank you for tuning in,
Cool.
Badu. Sorry if I slaughtered your fucking name there. Um, cool. And boy, there's so many questions I have to ask you here, Larissa. I'm gonna just start ripping through the notes that I have from our phone call, if we could. And I'd like to start you back in Colorado, because you also told me, I believe, there was some connection in the early days of advocacy with Normal and Playboy. Can we do
Mm.
that again real quick?
Yeah, I wish I would have done this research probably before I even became an activist so that I knew what I was being hit with. But in 2008, Playboy ran an article about the murder of Ken Gorman, and it made it seem like my organization, the Colorado Compassion Club, may have had something to do with it. They interviewed my ex-husband, who was interviewed as a suspect, but wasn't, he was not considered a key suspect in Ken's murder, which is still cold, still a cold case. But they ran this piece that, around the murder, and that really painted my organization poorly, and it made us look like, you know, thugs. And then I didn't understand the connection. I'm like, why did Playboy do this article? Nobody called me to interview me. And I was the one who literally filed the paperwork for the Colorado Convention Club, just focused on my husband. And I think probably they were trying to sensationalize that he was a suspect, but multiple people were interviewed as a suspect. He just happened to be getting media at the time for marijuana. So they sensationalized it. But here's the thing, Playboy helped found Normal. And I don't understand why Normal would have gone out of their way to make a member of the community, like my ex-husband, look like such a bad guy, and to make us look like we were so out of control, unless they were trying to set the stage for something like creating regulations and basically scapegoating people as to, well, we need regulations. And
Your audio is lagging, Larissa. I can't hear your audio at all. Hold up. I have to try to hold up. Oh, we're gonna have to try to fix this. I can't hear her. Can you guys hear the audio at all? If anyone's watching, there's two people watching. Can you hear her audio at all? I cannot hear that. Hold up. Hold up, Larissa. Oh, this fucking. Hey, Larissa. Hold up. I can't hear you at all. It's like that USB. Nope. Can't hear you at all. Yep. Hey, sorry guys. I think we're having a little bit of audio issues, and thank you to LinkedIn user who said no. Uh, Larissa, hey, I'm gonna try to get Larissa back here. We're definitely having some issues with the audio, but we're gonna get Larissa back here if she's available. I know she's available because we set this up. Hey, Larissa, I hope you come back to us because I'm super interested to hear what you have to say. And, for the rest of y'all, until Larissa gets back, I've had a lot of people really, including here, I'll show you this fucking screenshot I got from Shalene Title, where she really, like, I don't know, she gave shit to Larissa for coming on my show. Where's this fucking, I got this screenshot here somewhere. Larissa's still not back. Her bubble is in there. But here we go. I'm gonna dig these up. It's gonna take me a second, but oh, my roommate is watching TV, so I can't use the living room. That's where the Wi-Fi is. Well, if Larissa can't come back, I'm gonna do a whole other show. Okay, well, shit. I'll riff on this for another half hour if I have to. Was that Larissa? There's Larissa. Hey, Larissa. Oh, you got no audio there. You got no audio on that. No sound. Oh, no sound. Okay. Oh shit! No sound. I'm gonna keep riffing here until we do this. And yo, one of these. So, oh, I wish I could get sound. Larissa, there's no sound. Oh, now she's gone again. Hmm. I'd like to share a little bit of stuff based on my last show with Larissa. And if you guys watch any of the stuff I did with Ben Cohen, uh, you'll recognize this. So after I interviewed Larissa the first time, I posted it on Twitter, and this was a comment from Shalene Tidal, who said, "You seem like a nice person, and non-corporate independent podcasts play a crucial role. I would be careful about hosting people who slander 5 to 6 people of color in one episode. I'm not going to do anything, but others might." So, hey, what? Hey, Larissa, are you there? Larissa, I see your video. I just don't see the audio. Hey, Larissa, can you hear me? No, no. I hate that. I cannot hear you at all, Larissa. I wish I could because I really have a ton of questions to ask you right now. But if we're having connection issues, we could reschedule this for another day. I don't know. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. She's got no audio either. That's just. Hey, can you hear me now? Yeah, she's bouncing out. I think her connection is fucked a little here, guys. Um, I do want to apologize for that. I always, yeah, there's not much I can do about the connection stuff. However, I'm gonna figure this out with Larissa ASAP, and we're gonna solve this because we've got a ton of good conversation to have here about the history of cannabis advocacy in the country. We're going to be talking about Vicente Cedarberg. We're going to be talking about marijuana policy project. We're going to be talking about the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, the Drug Policy Alliance, marijuana moment. Uh, yeah, sorry about that, guys. Uh, I can't really help. We're also going to be talking about Governor Jared Polis out there in Colorado. Oh, she's coming back. Let's try it again.
It was picking me up before.
Oh,
Oh,
hey,
you're back. Okay.
are you back?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, fuck, I just spoiled the whole show by
You
telling
did.
them what we were going to talk about.
Oh,
can
did
can
I
we
explain it before? I'm
rewind
in
because
Trinidad, Colorado, surrounded by mountains and rocks. So Wi-Fi has just been unstable today.
yeah, cool. I'm glad you made it back, Larissa. I'd like if you could baby walk, and we got a comment here. Oh, she's back. There we go. Thanks, LinkedIn user. I appreciate that. So I'd like you to walk us through basically your whole history of advocacy, starting in Colorado. And I know we've done some of this on the other shows, but I'd really like to get into this tonight and figure out. I know you had some interactions with Normal out there, and I'd really like to start from Colorado and just work this all the way up to today.
Okay. So, in 2001, I moved to Colorado as a medical marijuana refugee. My ex-husband had already been living in Colorado and had asked me to come out here, to with him. And so he came back to Virginia where I was living. We got married and came back out to Colorado. And almost immediately I got involved in cannabis. We were, growing our own, and he's a patient. And so, through our actions, or just being involved in cannabis, we met Ken Gorman, who got Amendment 20 passed by gathering the necessary signatures and getting all the media necessary to sway the vote and get the signatures necessary. He's the one who founded the 420 rally and would organize smoke-ins at the Capitol, and then a big rally on 420, and then eventually Amendment 20 was passed. And so I met Ken through my ex-husband. They were doing windshield repairs, chip repairs, which is a big thing in Colorado because of the snow. And Ken basically tapped me to be his colleague. He, at the time, he was working with a lady named Doreen Bishop, who was an activist in Colorado who moved from California, and she helped jumpstart the medical marijuana movement in Colorado. When she got to Colorado, she didn't find it as robust as California, obviously, because we were lagging behind California by a few years. And so she started joining in different activism stuff, and became an active member of Normal, and working with different activists. Warren Edson was her attorney, and he helped found the Colorado Normal. And Ken was a libertarian activist who was kind of more like your hippie weed guy. But he just had a lot of charisma, and he was just very compelling. And, he got involved in marijuana legalization because he saw the disparities in arrests and imprisonment. And, just, he's a white man, but, he just really honed in on the social justice aspect of the argument for legalization and patient rights. And so between him and Doreen, they made a lot of noise and gathered the signatures necessary for Amendment 20. But, Doreen burned out on the activism side. And, eventually I would too. There's a lot back then, the drug war, I mean, it's still happening now, but back then there was, marijuana was just not even cool. It was just, you're battling cops and robbers, and the cops weren't helping you with robbers. So Doreen burned out pretty quickly, and Ken asked me to basically take her place. And so I, unwittingly said, sure. Didn't really realize what I was signing up for. And what that was basically being an activist and going to city and county buildings and protesting when patients were getting arrested for their legal six plants, which was happening. You had patients with cancer and other terminal diseases who were getting arrested and being put in jail for having six plants. And, it was just really, I mean, I'm a passionate person. It didn't take much for me to see how the injustice behind that. And so I just started protesting. And working with Ken, we'd go to all these events, and then I would help him organize the 420 rally and pass out flyers. And then we also helped patients find access to marijuana, and we found growers, most of them in the illicit market, who were illicit dealers, who we then help train on how to grow organically. And then we would help assign them patients. And then in 2004, I was raided. They didn't have a search warrant. They invoked the Patriot Act. And I think there's a couple things that led to that. I think, protesting at city and county buildings, protesting cops. And I also held protests at the federal building. So protesting federal cops too probably garnered some of their ire. But, at the time, uh, I wasn't very politically savvy. I just was an activist, and we were growing marijuana in our basement. We had someone who was also growing for patients that we worked with, and we barely were able to meet the needs of the community. So we started operating more as a collective. And then that's when we were raided, and they were wanting to investigate us for federal RICO, but they just couldn't find anything. And when they raid you with the Patriot Act, they actually have like 7 years, I believe, to investigate you. And when they investigate you under the Patriot Act, that's basically a proctology exam. You don't have any freedom. They can access your medical records, your library records, your everything. And, you know, I have a lot of people
medical
on that.
medical records, you said, Larissa?
Yeah, they can go into anything. You have to read the Patriot Act. It's pretty gross. Nothing's private when you're deemed a terrorist.
Wow, nothing is sacred. Yeah.
Nothing's sacred. Yeah. And so, you know, it was raided in 2004. And that's actually at the time we were having meetings in a church, and then we were dispensing out of the church. And so, when we got raided, that put us on the map. That actually is why I started getting media in cannabis. My name at the time was Larisa Lawrence, Lawrence. When I was married, that was my name. Bolivar is on my birth certificate. That's my birth name. And so if you look up Larisa Lawrence medical marijuana, you'll find a lot of this history. But in 2004, when we were raided, that propelled us into the media. Me and my ex-husband, Ken, had already been getting all of the media for marijuana. And so I wasn't really trying to get into the media for this. Now there is, you know, political policy work and political strategy is very media intensive. It's a media play. I literally was just trying to help sick people. And, you know, every once in a while I would write letters and then do protests to make sure and protect their rights. So when I started getting, you know, interviews with the media, I would actually run and hide and have my ex-husband do it all. Maybe that's why Playboy decided to interview him. But I was absolutely in the media and had been interviewed for other issues. So I still can't figure out why I was never interviewed for that. But anyhow, it wasn't my intention to become weed famous. It was literally I got raided. Suddenly the media is at my house asking me for sound bites on like cases that are happening in California. And you know, so um and because I got into the media, I started stepping on toes, and I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that there was a whole power structure around the legalization movement, and they definitely did not. I am not their approved person, and you know that's a hard thing on my ego, you know, because I risk my life to help so many people, but I'm not good enough, never have been. They can't control whatever the case may be. I I'm not wealthy. I'm just an activist who happened to get media. And that's how I got involved in cannabis. And then when Ken was murdered and, you know, the Playboy article happened and then the regulations started coming in, it got harder and harder for me to participate on the business side. And that's when I started consulting. And then that's when I started working on policy. I started through the Denver 420 rally, and you know I wrote all of their speeches for several years after Ken was murdered. Um,
Will
the
you tell us
attorney
about
for
that?
what's
Can
that?
I stop? Can I
Yeah,
stop
yeah,
you? Can,
yeah. Because I worry
I,
about rambling because I have to cover so much ground in so small of time.
that's okay, Larissa. I want to stop you on this stuff about Ken because I'm
Okay.
really curious to hear your thoughts about what happened there.
Hmm.
And if you could, maybe you could give everybody a little backstory about Ken and who he was. And I know you touched on that a little, but you know, I'd really love to hear about that.
So Ken Gorman, also known as Governor Pot, ran for governor in Colorado actually at one point on the libertarian ticket, but he was a major marijuana activist, and he I mean, I can't say he was absolutely single-handedly responsible for getting medical marijuana passed, but he sure had like 80% of it, you know, having passed. And so he kept it going with after Amendment 20 passed. And so he advocated more for like a laissez-faire, just anybody can access marijuana, treat it like tomatoes type of model. Very libertarian, very on that stance. And he also helped create the gray market because he exploited the loopholes in Amendment 20, which legalized a transaction between a patient and a caregiver, which could just be a street dealer. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, part of why I was supporting legalization was to help get people, you know, a legitimate path towards providing marijuana legally. So Ken basically became the unofficial spokesperson for marijuana in Colorado from like the mid to late 90s until sorry, one of the dogs is trying to get my attention.
Don't
From
apologize.
the
Don't
from the
apologize,
mid to late 90s until 2007 when he was murdered. And basically, there was not a single piece of news that happened in marijuana at all that Ken didn't get interviewed for. So he was the face. And that, I think, made him a target one way or another. In 2007, in February, we're coming up on his anniversary of the murder, the next month. He was shot and killed in what they claim was a botched robbery, and it's still a cold case. And at the time, there were some robberies happening in his neighborhood, and Ken was known not to lock his door. But it just, the circumstances, they're kind of shady. Like, 3 people apparently walked in his house, and there was a scuffle, and they shot him, and they left without taking any money or marijuana. So, and that's why they're saying it's a botched robbery. But this was 2007. Since then, I've worked with and interviewed plenty of people who were former members of gangs, and I even interviewed a lot of current and retired police officers, and it just doesn't. It just, the first thing they say, it's a hit, and what I've heard, the feedback I hear is that, and I'm not trying to sensationalize anything. This is a cold case, but these are the realities that those of us who are close to him have had to deal with, really.
You talk to members of law enforcement about this case.
Yeah, I haven't talked to any detectives that are like, the case is cold, and I've actually recently tried reaching out to people in Denver Police Department. I haven't heard back, which is just weird. And so and then there was some guy that was in jail that was claiming to have been, the guy who murdered Ken, and that was a cold lead. And a lot of times people do that because they're just trying to get fame themselves, or they're part of, maybe a gang that they're already in jail, and they're like, well, yeah, I'll take the heat.
Or they're trying to get their sentence lightened.
Or their sentence lightened, something, anything, who knows? But that led nowhere. And so, but the fact of the matter remains is that, one of our leaders in the cannabis movement, it was dead. And there's no solution. There's no resolution. There's no closure. I can tell you that immediately after Ken's death was when a whole new slew of people filled that power void, as always happens when there's a power void. And a lot of these people were already working in the marijuana space. And so they filled that void. My attorney, Robert Corey Jr., at the time actually became the, responsible for the 420 rally. Part of the problems we were having with the 420 rally, and that Ken had actually sought counsel with Rob on, and Rob claims that they were good friends, but I think it was more like a legal type of relationship, if that, more like an advisory role. But so Ken and I, we stopped organizing officially for the 420 rally around the time that the Rave Act came out, which was in the early 2000s. And they basically, the Rave Act would, under the Rave Act, if there anybody that gets harmed or arrested or any foul play, anything at a party, the organizers of the party go to jail. They're the ones held accountable and responsible. And so we didn't want to be responsible for a rally of thousands of people that we haven't pulled permits on. That's a political rally. So we just kind of let it happen. And then when Rob Corey took over, his big spiel at the beginning of every rally every year is whoever gets in trouble, they have legal support through him. So that solved that issue. And then, there was just a lot, every year the rally was held. And then, the organizers of the rally weren't necessarily supportive of regulations for medical marijuana. They were involved. I was involved. I was living in Virginia at the time. I left Colorado in 2008 because it just got so dangerous for me between the gang violence and police harassment. My ex-husband was actually brutalized. So, a couple years earlier, before the Playboy article.
What's up? A lot of gangs out there. A lot of gangs out there in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, they're
yeah. Larisa, I'm from Vermont, so please bear with me.
I don't know. Sorry, I was born in DC and then moved to Denver and was working in Chicago and LA. So I work with, a lot of former gang leaders. So for me it's and I have family members who are former gang members. So,
Yeah,
for
we
me it's a,
we come
you
from
know,
we
yeah.
come from different places. Yeah.
So, and
Word up.
these people aren't scary people. This is, if you look at the history of a lot of the gangs that were founded, a lot of them were founded because of social justice. Communities are shut out of participating in, the regular economy and in policies. And when you get left out, you start formulating your own groups to claim power. And then sometimes those groups then get convoluted and twisted and get violent. And that's just indicative of a larger social problem of a lack of growth. And when we're competing against our own and eating our own instead of growing out of these cycles of, basically self-abuse, this is what we're destined for. And this is why I work so hard in what I do on the social justice side, is because I come from these communities. My dad was, my dad started painting, but my dad used to sell cocaine. My dad actually helped introduce cocaine to the DC area. And these are things that my family are actually sharing with me now because he's older. He just had a heart attack and a stroke actually over the summer, both. And I have more license to speak out on some things now, but I'm growing more concerned because those of us who got involved in this fight to create legal pathways for our communities have been shut out. I mean, we've just been completely shut out. It's only people that and I know this sounds conspiratorial, but I'm not trying to be that way. It's just a fact. If you can't be controlled, if you're a black or brown person or a white person from a poor community, if you are not speaking a certain narrative that falls in line with what those in power are speaking, your voice is not going to get heard. It's just not, unless you know someone like Caleb. But and these are other
So
conversations, these are all tendrils of all these conversations that we keep having. But I spent tens of thousands of dollars on a social equity bill here in Denver, or not in Denver, I mean the capital is in Denver, but for the state of Colorado, after finding out that the industry was trying to push their own bill and couldn't get support. And when I did that, I got labeled as an angry Latina, unworkable, can't work with people, I'm throwing bombs on policies, I'm blah blah blah. No, really all I'm doing is making sure that my community has a stake in this, outside of the people that are preaching pre-approved sound bites. Period.
I've never found you unworkable. I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm gonna
Same with all
I
my references are great, but politically I'm known, I'm a wild card. You just never know what I'm going to say, and I think that really upsets people because I speak the truth.
well, and here we go. I'm gonna put myself in the big box for a second. I'm with Larisa Bolivar, who is a wild card, and you never know what she's gonna say. And I'm super happy to have her here. I've been talking with Larisa for I don't know, a year and a half now. And you know, she's put me onto a lot of shit. Larissa, so I want to dig into some of these advocacy groups. And what I'd like to do is just throw a bunch of names at you, if that's cool. We're gonna do like a lightning round where
Okay.
I throw a bunch of names at you, and I just love to hear your thoughts about the names that I say at you.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not even dressed for
All
this.
right.
I look crazy. Okay.
You're not.
They're gonna be okay. If you were gonna
Well,
pick me
hey,
apart for talking shit about them, they're gonna be like, "Well, look at her.
oh,
She
check this out.
can't even put herself
I have a
together for
nice
this
shirt
show."
on.
Okay.
Yeah, one of us has a shirt. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
So, Larissa, and this is the reason I talk to you, Larissa, and all of the shit you fed me has been super on point. So that's why we keep talking. And the first thing I'm going to throw at you is the name of Vicente Cedarberg.
Of course, that's a heavy hitting name.
Yeah,
Brian
sorry.
Vicente and Christian Cedarberg. They pass laws.
Could you tell everybody who's watching maybe like what they do or where they
So
came
Brian
from?
Vicente is an attorney, and Christian Cedarberg is an attorney, and they used to have a law firm called Vicente Cedarberg that is based out of Colorado, and they wrote Amendment 64 along with Robert Corey Jr. And then after they passed Amendment 64, they basically took the lead in all cannabis policy everywhere, but it's specifically here in Colorado. There's not a single thing that happens in Colorado marijuana without uh, Brian Vicente Cedarberg. Now I think it's just called Vicente because they're no longer uh, Vicente Cedarberg, which is weird.
Right.
But I haven't really
it's
followed
just
Christian
Vicente
since he's
now,
left
right?
the law firm.
Yeah, it's just Vicente now, right?
Yeah, it's just Vicente. But it's really interesting, these
Hmm.
folks, they helped really, they did a lot of stuff in setting the foundation for this tax and regulate model. It is their brain, for all intents and purposes, their brainchild. They had other people that helped them come up with the policy, but this was, you know regulation works is Brian Vicente's mantra. And so they're the ones who led the policy discussions um in marijuana basically all over up until starting the United uh, States Cannabis Council, USCC, which is also, and then there's also the the United States Hispanic Cannabis Council, I think, is what Brian Vicente launched recently. But they're both the same. I mean, it's all the same. Like, these are all the same people. Brian Vicente is a prodigy of Marijuana Policy Project. Sorry, my dogs are all, when I'm talking, they think I'm talking to them, and then they tend to just gather around me. So,
Well, and look, uh, can I just kind of intercede here
yeah.
because Marijuana Policy Project is also on my list, and I would love if you do my own segue for me there, which you just
Okay.
did, and talk about that as well because that's definitely on my list here, Larissa.
So, Marijuana Policy Project branched off of Normal National Organization of Reformation of Marijuana Laws is the oldest marijuana lobbying group. And there was a guy that got basically fired from Normal, and he went on and started his own. Rob Campia is his name, and he went on and started his own. Hang on a second. Out. He went on and started his own organization called Marijuana Policy Project, and basically gathered a lot of support from a lot of rich people, and used a lot of the methods and strategies that existing activists were using to formulate the Marijuana Policy Project, which basically became a rich boys club for marijuana legalization, kind of like a controlled opposition to Normal, if you will, that represented more of a larger business interest, and Normal was kind of like the hippie, group, pro drugs, everything, pro party. Marijuana Policy Project was like a preppy white boy club who kind of just came in on the back end and be like, yeah, we're all the guys in the suits and the lawyers, and we got our friend Rich Rob Campia, who has all these other connections, and they brought in people like the late Steve Fox as a political strategist. I'm not sure, he died a couple years ago. There's speculation it might be suicide. It was during COVID. Who knows? It was never, cause of death was never released publicly. But Steve Fox used to work as a strategist with the Clinton administration, and so they pulled in some pretty heavy hitting people. And then they also, there's also the Drug Policy Alliance that's funded and ran by rich people. And I have nothing against rich people. It's just I have to really specify this so that people can understand. One of the gripes I have about marijuana legalization is what I call hostile takeover of the illicit market. They came in, I met Brian Vicente when he was getting his law degree at DU, and he was coming to my meetings. He even taught a couple know your rights courses at my meetings. And this was a way for them to come in and ingratiate themselves with all of my community. I had a community of all kinds of different activists, all of them mostly struggling, whether they had felonies, marijuana felonies, whether they were sick. We were the people who were the movement. We were the people who were targeted for arrest. We were the people who could definitely benefit from being able to participate in this market. And basically, and you can actually see this in every state, and I have other activists who will corroborate this, and you've even met them, Caleb. But they systematically went into other states, and any of those who were getting a voice in cannabis were deplatformed. And this is a continuous thing. Back to when I spent thousands of dollars to get social equity passed in Colorado, the governor's office took over the implementation of it with Vicente Cedarberg, and then basically told me I needed to hire a lobbyist if I wanted to be involved. Lobbyists cost a lot of money, people. Like it broke me getting social equity passed. And so, but this is when I found out that, just like George Carlin says that, they're all in a club and I'm not in it. And this is when I really found out that I'm not in this club. And this is when I reached out, I wanted to be sure that I had some sound bites publicly in the media on a bill that I just spent tens of thousands of dollars on to pass. And I got shut out and deplatformed again because I was exposing how Governor Polis and the industry were basically had a chokehold on social equity and the industry and who can come in and who can go out. And my other gripe is that they're protecting these artificially inflated license values. And those that have the voices in social equity in Colorado are some of the first licensees and big media people. It's a protectionism thing right now that we're dealing with, Caleb. It's a club.
And I've seen that in other states where people, in Connecticut, I've seen a senator's wife get a social equity license. And, I've seen a lot of privileged people gaining access to these social equity licenses, which to me seems totally counterintuitive to the whole, mantra behind those social equity licenses, where it was supposed to help people. It was supposed to help people that were negatively impacted by the war on drugs. But then I see all these,
as long as you join their club, you have to join their club. And then you can play. I mean, it's just literally what that is. And they're letting lawmakers and regulators decide who gets entry and who doesn't. There's no mystery about these licensing processes having been corrupted in multiple states. It's just nobody's doing anything about it. But then, the Justice Department is advising lawmakers and these regulators and these business owners on marijuana policies. So maybe they're like, well, as long as you're a millionaire, apparently if you're a millionaire in the United States, you're like squeaky clean. It doesn't matter. But it's, it's just legally. And this isn't a gripe that I talk about. This is why I got involved in activism in the first place, was the injustice of the criminal justice system. And what we're watching play out right now is just a total injustice of what's playing out in the United States, period. And that extends beyond cannabis. And that goes into, the increasing oligarchy and lack of voice that everyday citizens have. We don't have a representative democracy anymore. We basically have lawmakers looking out for their best interests. One of the fastest ways to become a millionaire these days is to run for office, to get elected. I mean, AOC is a great example. She's someone that's supposedly not bought out. She's become a millionaire. Like that. It's such a, I mean, hell, when I was struggling in college, people were like, run for office. And I turned it down because I just didn't, I have a strong sense of integrity. Maybe it's just not valued in this country, because I feel like if you have too much integrity, then, you actually get shut out of opportunity. But I just, yeah, it's pretty messy and it's pretty sad, because I feel like, we're powerless. And now they're talking about Schedule 3. And, I started writing, I'm working on a letter to my lawmakers here, our federal representatives here. And, I feel like, why bother? They're not listening to me. Unless I'm coming to the door with millions of dollars for their campaign or votes, they don't care. They don't care. And Schedule 3, if we move cannabis into Schedule 3, that positions already well-doing businesses to be able to take over the market. And then what about adult use? Like, there's just so much ambiguity happening right now. And I'm seeing activists that call themselves grassroots, and I do quotes because I don't think they're grassroots. I didn't meet them. If I didn't meet someone before 2007, then they're not grassroots. And so, sorry, not sorry. It's just I have friends that died in this, and that's just I have a hard stance on this. But you have people that are calling themselves OGs that are out there advocating for Schedule 3, which makes me wonder, this isn't baby steps. This is like a takeover of a market that's happening. And they're trying to pacify
And it
us
does seem
like
like
they
some of
did
that.
before.
Well,
And now they already
well,
used the
and that was
voters. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
it wasn't in my notes at all, Larissa. But the
Oh.
Schedule 3 stuff seems like a big pharma takeover.
Mm-hmm.
At least from my reading of the rules, and and I don't, that might be an oversimplification of it, but it sure seems to me like uh descheduling is the way.
Absolutely. Pharma can have medical. They can have, they don't have to own the whole cannabis plant to be able to create medicines from it. And that's what's really frustrating about this. You know, these baby steps. The sad thing about it is big pharma has a lot of money to lobby, and the DEA was, for all intents and purposes. Sorry, I'm just grabbing my charger. For all intents and purposes, was created to protect big pharma. I mean, the Controlled Substance Act was created to schedule drugs so that the FDA can have control over the development of it, and then those that didn't have access.
And then she was gone.
I charged my phone. Okay, there we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're back.
I'm
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Go ahead, Larissa. Yeah.
Here. Yeah.
We were talking
So
about something.
I'm not surprised to see Schedule 3. And we can
I'm
shorten the
I'm not
conversation on Schedule 3. I do. Pardon
I'm
me.
not surprised either. I'm not surprised
Yeah.
either. I'm not happy about it, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding that there's a compromise with big pharma, like they can have medical, we can have adult use, and that's why we were pushing this mantra of all use is medical. This way, consumers who are going to a retail store and paying taxes can still feel good that they're buying medicine for themselves. I mean, I understand. Like, again, I support legalization, but this yeah, deschedule. The handing it off to big pharma is not on the table. I don't feel like that any of us have any type of stake in this argument, though, because
And,
that's millions and billions of dollars in lobbying that none of us have. So
and even on a state to state basis, I feel like, you know, um, this has become very complicated in a way that it doesn't need to be. People are growing a plant and putting it in a bag.
yeah.
I don't know. It seems like, in my opinion, this has become unnecessarily cumbersome,
Oh, for sure.
for business uh, for
Yeah.
business owners. Yeah.
Yeah, big time. I mean, like, you've got all these competing interests. And so, what was supposed to be simple isn't. And then, people like me, this is why, people don't like to give me a voice. Some people, not everybody, but there are people like me who pointed out flaws in the system, and that I don't think has helped. I think social equity um, was kind of a surprise. I think, well, the MCBA formed, and then they eventually became part of NCIA, so the Minority Cannabis Business Alliance, and then they joined with National Cannabis Industry Association. And when MCBA started,
No
they were
shit.
trying
Okay.
to integrate and create diversity in the space. But, the conversation of social equity actually did not really take fire and take hold until and it was actually me and a lady named Bonita Money with Indica. And I used to work with Indica. we were the first people doing panels. I wrote my master's thesis on the issue of lack of diversity in the cannabis space, and towards the, one of the solutions I had was to create some sort of social equity model, or to, promote social equity. And then Bo and I, Bo actually had a hard time getting, I'm not with Indica anymore, but this is just the history of how this conversation even started. Bo had started getting panels at different events, these conferences. And at first, they wouldn't even entertain social equity. And it wasn't until we got buy-in from former NFL athletes like Marvin Washington, who literally took a stand and said that he wasn't going to do any more panels until we discussed social equity. Then we started having panels. And then that's when, shortly after that, that's when like everybody else started chiming in on the conversation. And I'm not saying I'm the very first, but I'm just saying that, the it was like this whole like, oh, we'll just sweep, it was like kind of like don't ask, don't tell, or sweeping. I don't even know how to correlate
Uh,
it, to you know, or
yeah,
to give an
well,
example, but it was basically like the climate, and it's still this way. The climate back then was we cannot have any negative news about marijuana. It all has to be positive because we need to pass legalization. And so any blight on the industry was quickly swept under the rug, or they had
uh,
their approved people come in and take over the conversation, which is what happened. They had all of the MPP, blessed people, all of the all of the people who got their licenses, despite having helped, you know, shut out everybody else. All the people who pulled up those ladders suddenly were leading the conversation on social equity.
what do you
And
what do you mean by that, Larissa? Pulled up the ladders.
usually, I mean, this happens a lot in, black and brown communities, and, anybody, or it doesn't even have to be black and brown, but, this is what we refer to as crabs in a basket, where we have to pull one person down to lift another up. Well, what happens when someone does succeed, oftentimes it's just expected, especially in a movement like this, where someone's going to reach back behind them and pull them up too. But instead of pulling up the people behind them, they pulled up the whole ladder and shut the door. That's just
And,
exactly what happened.
and
A lot of
you
us
know,
invested a lot of money into this, and but we didn't have enough. This was a big money play. We're not, and it's unfortunate. And that's what's happening is you have all the big money people who got bought into the whole idea of legalization, and who spent millions of dollars getting their licenses, thinking that they would have like this exclusive entry into this marketplace, suddenly had to compete with the people that got shut out. And those people got a voice. And then that voice got taken over again by MPP, because MPP absolutely controls that voice.
yeah, and another
NORML
note
as
you
well.
made. Yeah, wait, would you care to comment on the NORML stuff? Because I got Keith Troop coming on in 2 weeks. But
Oh, do you?
yeah, I just and I've talked to people who work for um other chapters of NORML around the country who seem like really good people. But then I hear some other stuff that to me seems um, kind of disturbing. It's weird to hear such a range of opinions about this same group here. I'd be curious
Yes.
to hear your thoughts.
NORML is also a group of wealthy, influential power brokers, basically, that come out of DC. They have there's NORML, there's headquarters in DC, and then each state runs its own chapters. And that's probably why you're hearing, different, or you're meeting different types of people. A lot of times people who start a NORML chapter are just everyday activists who, see NORML as having a voice, and then they see that they can join that voice and amplify it, which is fine. But you have to be controllable. Again, you're part of that narrative. I was a board member of Colorado NORML, and then when I became uncontrollable, they voted me off the board. And by uncontrollable, I filed a couple complaints, and they told me, or I complained, vocally expressed something, and they told me I didn't complain properly, and they voted me off the board. This was also around the time that they got a new Latino on the board too. So I can't make any, allegations, but I can certainly help draw out the math and people can make their own deductions from there. But they were actually, that's when I first found out about this, the industry talking about social equity. And one of the reasons why I got mad in a meeting was I found out that a lot of people were meeting with lawmakers from Colorado Normal and about social equity, and they hadn't invited me. And that hurt my feelings. I mean, I'm not, this isn't, it's not an ego thing, but at the same time, I'm a
Why
victim of the drug war. My family is a victim of the drug war. Like, you're
can
gonna
I
just
can
shut
I
my
ask
voice
you
down? Hmm?
can I ask you
Yeah.
why that hurt your feelings?
It just made me feel like I just didn't matter in this conversation after risking everything I had and then some. I come from a very underprivileged family. I mean, my dad's an immigrant from Peru. My mom is what they divorced. My mom's a single parent with mental health issues, like mental health issues related to trauma, related to generations of trauma and that family. Like, this was finally I was getting my master's in public policy, finally getting a voice, but because I didn't behave in a certain manner, and it's not like I was out blasting normal on social media. This was an internal phone call, and I sent them an email as well. But it had to do with their founder, Warren Edson, from Colorado. He founded Colorado Normal, and he was spreading. He was the one who was spreading the rumors about my ex-husband murdering Ken Gorman, and was continuing to do that. And so, I had two complaints. I had that I wanted to have a conversation around that with them, and they just voted me off the board instead of giving me any dignity. So yeah, I mean, being robbed of your dignity hurts. Being robbed of your voice hurts. You know, and now that I'm older, I can see that it's all about control. And but nobody ever sat me down privately to be like, hey, how can we address your needs and your community needs so that you're not so angry all the time? Because anger is what motivates activists. Come on, let's be real. An activist isn't just sitting on their couch happy one day and then decides to go risk their life because they're extremely exuberant about a situation. you know so coach other people. But no, you're gonna punish me for going against the grain. Well, you shouldn't have hurt me in the first place. And I go back to that Playboy article. They tried to erase
Hmm.
us from history, and I literally almost died. I
Uh,
literally watched my ex-husband get brutalized by police. Like, this is real pain. My marriage ended around all of this. This is pain.
I
And
don't
it's
I
just
don't
making it like it's not like it doesn't matter. And I'm not the only person who feels this way. And that's why I bring it up, because now, like, I felt like I was the only person for many years. And then thank God for social media and legalization reaching other states. Now I have a whole party of activists who feel the exact same way, just completely left out after exhausting our resources to fight some other man's war.
and
This was a collective effort.
and can I do you mind if I slap a screenshot up here from Shalene Title?
Oh, yeah. She
Yeah.
loves me.
Yeah, this was after our first interview. I'm gonna blow this up so I can read it. Um, she said, and she was talking to me. She said, "You seem like a nice person, and non-corporate independent podcasts play a crucial role. I'd be careful about hosting people who slander 5 to 6 people of color in one episode. I'm not going to do anything, but others might, and
Hiding behind
to me
identity
that's
politics. That's all I have to say about that. First of all, for the record,
where's that? How do I get that? How do I get that off there? Hold up. Let me get that.
oh, it won't
I
come
don't know
off.
where the. Oh my god. There we go.
Parabola that Bush mentions
Yeah.
about pronouncing it
And you
correctly.
and you
You mean
know so
Shailene? Shailene is one of those people that's really mad
well
at me because I
well
like to
here's
point out. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well I talked to Shalene I
Uh-huh.
asked her to point out something that you said during our interviews that was defamatory or untrue. She couldn't come up with one example. And and so for a lawyer to use a term like slander to me, or where she's accusing someone of something like that, it seems like a lawyer should be more careful about using words like that.
Yeah.
And if you did say something that was defamatory, I certainly would have took a look at it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
asked I asked Shalene specifically to show me an example of something you said that was defamatory, and she could not provide one example.
Because I wasn't trash talking. I was literally just talking about people who left certain positions of power who went into another position of power. They're public figures. It's not slander. And Shailene hasn't reached out to me personally to threaten me or sue me. Now she has tried really hard to deplatform me. And she doesn't come from a family targeted by the war on drugs. She comes from privilege. And I'm not negating that she doesn't. I mean, I know she experiences racism. I'm sure she does. She's a brown woman from India. Like, I mean, that's just a common thing. I'm not negating that. But this movement was founded for people, to free people, to give justice to people who were harmed directly by the drug war. That's Latinos, blacks, poor whites, East Asians.
Yeah.
And then, like there's yeah, you can just look at arrest records and see the demographics,
Poor
right?
whites, right here. Yeah.
Poor whites, yeah. I mean, you have a history. Your dad, your family was targeted in the drug wars. So, for Shailene to deplatform a woman of color, because my dad, I've even been questioned about my ethnicity. I'm happy to send my birth certificate to people. It proudly says Bolivar. My dad is a Peruvian immigrant. My dad himself, he's Inca and he's part black. My mom's dad, who raised her, black. My family is like black and brown and like 5 white people. And the cousins that are mixed, they all look like me. I'm happy to bring them all on stage if people need to verify who my family is. I come from a civil rights family. I am absolutely going to speak out and call out people who are members of the communities my family live and dwell and thrive and die for. For heaven's sake, I have every right to call out people who aren't doing right by our community members. If they're siding with big business, with big money in any way, that's not helping us. They may argue, well, that's how we get in. Sure, that's fine. But don't pull up that ladder, because as soon as they pull up that ladder, then it's a big lie to me. And I'm going to call it out. I'm
No,
just going to call it out. Because, yes, if you're a person of color, you absolutely stand a higher chance of getting arrested for drugs. Everybody that's a person of color should absolutely have a say about that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there were very clear people in this movement investing in this movement 20 plus years ago who then were completely shut out, and instead had a whole new group of people put in power who had nothing to do with the legalization or the movement. And if their spouses or their family did, sure, that's happened to all of us, but they were not activists in this movement. They were busy working on their careers. They were busy doing other things. They came in out of left field. I'll talk about Toy Hutchinson again, and from MPP. There's a lot of shadiness going on with her in Illinois. There was a lot of shadiness going on with the licensing process.
I'm gonna solo on you for a second there. Yeah, please go ahead, Larissa.
Yeah, because there was a lot of questionable behavior before she even became part of MPP. And when she became part of MPP, that basically made it okay for her to have done all of this questionable stuff, where people who got licenses ahead of other people who got licenses probably shouldn't have gotten licenses. But I'm slanderous calling it out. I'm not the one who was an elected official who is benefiting from revolving door policies. I mean, it's
And
just
I assume if you were
right.
slanderous, you'd be getting letters from their lawyers that tell you to shut the fuck up,
Yeah.
because that's usually how they do it.
This is usually how they do it.
Um,
and I received absolutely nothing. My email's public.
so Larissa, boy, we got an hour and 20 on the books here. I want to ask you, thank you so much for being here. I don't even have a picture to slap on.
Oh, I thought I told you to use the. Sorry, I forgot to tell
Oh,
you
it's
to. I thought I
okay.
did.
But
My
like
weekend was pretty crazy.
yo,
The same
the
picture is fine. Is
the
what I meant to tell
same
you. I thought I
picture
did.
was your face, and your face is right here with us right now. And I'm so happy you're here with me. But I also just I want to ask you about some of these advocacy groups because
Okay.
as part of my work, I've looked at these advocacy groups and we've touched on this a little, but the marijuana policy project is one I'd really like to talk about, and the Students for Sensible Drug Policy is the other one. And I really love to hear your thoughts on those two groups, please.
Well, they're all incestuous is I guess the best way to describe it. The marijuana policy project, sensible students for sensible drug policy. I mean, you can just see, NCIA, they're all the same. And a lot of times people who led one will go lead another. But basically, you know, SSDP is like an indoctrination club for MPP and Drug Policy Alliance. It's Students for Sensible Drug Policy. It's related to, college and university. So if you're a student and, you participate in this group, then, a lot of times you get tapped by the MPP folks to work on policy as you move on up. And so that's why you see a lot of the same people that are going from one organization to another, and it seems like they're advancing in their career. It's really not that. It's just really making it look like the marijuana advocacy circle is larger than what it is, if that makes sense. So basically, it's giving the illusion that there's all these people backing marijuana, all these organizations backing it, but it's all the same people. And I mean, some of these, I mean, you can join trade organizations and pay money into them and exercise, democratically that way. But once you start getting to the top of running these organizations, it really does boil down to who you know and if you can be trusted to carry on a certain narrative. And, these are the people. They say they speak for us. I'm not sure how, I mean, I don't see, if they were speaking for the majority of cannabis consumers and small business owners, then they would be pushing for full decriminalization and an open market. But that's just not what's happening. What we keep seeing is the protectionism of a very elite marketplace where then they allow people in who can either partner up with one of the elites or somehow make it through the social equity process on their own. But what I'm seeing this evolve as is basically a cartel. It's a cartel.
Yeah, yeah, and it feels like, in a lot of the ways that I view it, as racketeering.
Oh, for sure, it's racketeering. I mean, like, come on, you're paying lawmakers to protect you from the federal government, and they're advancing people into licenses. You've had a couple of them arrested, a few of them arrested. The list is growing. So it makes activists like myself and others who I've talked to wonder, like, what side is law enforcement on? Like, I'm sure they even need to try to figure that out sometimes themselves too. Because there's a lot of irony in that legalizing marijuana has uncovered a lot of just illegal behavior. Corruption's illegal. I mean, that is, and you have people who are greasing palms to advance their licensing, status and getting in trouble for it. The whole
Uh,
regulatory model is very controlled, and I think it could be made fairer. And I'm sure, we're growing as an industry, and I'm sure things will keep changing to accommodate everyone's concerns. But as it stands today, it's just a very elite club of people protecting their licenses and using lawmakers and regulations in order to do it.
And, some people would complain that that's capitalism, and, inherently capitalism, but that's not what we're witnessing here. Capitalism would mean like, you have, anybody can enter a market. That's free market capitalism. And then you let the consumers decide whether they're good or not. You give them some regulations, like safety regulations, manufacturing regulations, OSHA, GMP, things of that nature. That makes sense. But then to start creating these arbitrary suitability requirements, and especially money requirements. I built my marijuana business, which was actually a vertically integrated business, a marijuana grow and a dispensary, for less than $100,000. It may have not been the most like elite and cleanness of like sanitary of like grow facilities at the time, but we didn't have a problem with mites. We didn't have a problem with powdery mildew, and our patients didn't complain. So yeah, real estate was a lot easier to come by. They didn't have these barriers where you couldn't have a store 1,000 feet from another, or from a school or church, or every state and municipality is different, but for the most part, it's keeping marijuana away from children. And so so that actually turned marijuana into a real estate play too. So it's not just owning a business, but it's securing the real estate and all the costs around that. And so, then that goes back into the whole slippery slope of the oligarch conversation, because then you're going after real estate that only certain people can afford. And a lot of times these people are making money off of real estate, like Governor Polis in Colorado, for example. He's invested in real estate. I haven't been able to find more information. Like when he initially ran, I think it's from 2016. I found something. I'm going to try to find some more, but I was pretty shocked to learn that a good portion of his wealth is from real estate.
What's
I don't think it's correlated
would
to
you care
cannabis, but it makes
to?
me wonder, how much of these lawmakers who support cannabis know that by supporting cannabis, it's going to make them richer. So
Well,
that's a
and
whole other conversation.
also the real estate angle of this seems like it's deeply connected with the cannabis, especially if you're growing indoor in
Oh
any
yeah,
type of city or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's nuisances, for example, smell. So that there's you're, and then there's a whole other argument about whether we should be growing indoor or outdoor. Personally, I think we should do both, because then that gives consumers more options. And then there's also argument on what is actually outdoor. Is it greenhouse? Is it a hoop house? Is it actually outdoor, exposed to all the elements? But you really start getting your options become very limited, and so that then jacks up the price. So those who have access to real estate and realtors and the money it takes and the capital are going to be the ones that win. And you can best believe that when they win that license, they're going to spend a fortune on lobbyists to protect it.
Yeah,
And that's
and I
basically
want
what we're dealing with now.
I just want to pull up this comment from Rodney here. Chef Rodney. Hey Caleb, speaking of real estate, ain't that what I was saying a while back? Yeah, it
Wow.
is 100%. And Rodney, yeah. Thanks for tuning in, Rodney.
Thanks,
Always,
Rodney, for validating
yeah,
what I'm saying. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a major issue. Mhm.
Rodney's on point always with his comments, and yeah, I'll get back to you later, Rodney. But I am getting it to the end of my I was hoping just if you would give us a little bit of a lecture about some of these advocacy groups, the Marijuana Policy Project, I don't know, the Last President Project. I don't know what you know about that either, but the Students for a Sensible Drug Policy. I'm really hoping you would just give us. I'm hoping you give us a little insight on that, Larissa, because the
I
advocacy
would
world seems like that's
You
your
know what I have
space,
to
and
say to that? I have something to say to that. Start your own orgs, people. Don't give money to these orgs anymore. Just don't. Don't share their articles. Don't start your own. Start your own. I think that's part of what needs to be done. The problem is that will people get a voice? That's hard to say, because even the media, and I hate to sound like a right-wing conspiracy theorist because I'm not, but I do have firsthand experience with, dealing with the media and not having it reported accurately. And I'm, if you don't mind, I'm going to speak about Marijuana Moment in this case, which is part of this club. Actually, they have a strong connection to Marijuana Policy Project. And in fact, Mason Tvert was on as an advisor for Marijuana Majority. Now Tom Engel started his whole, marijuana media endeavor with the Marijuana Majority, which was a website that tracks celebrities in cannabis, like whether they spoke out for it, whether they consumed it, anybody that was a celebrity or wealthy. And then, I see the Marijuana Majority as part of what helped start taking away the voices of the actual grassroots, and then putting in a whole new set of grassroots activists that, that were MPP and normal approved for adult use, because a lot of people didn't support tax and regulate. I mean, there was a lot. I mean, Ken Gorman himself didn't like the idea of high taxes and over regulation. So, so Marijuana Majority, yeah, it's a lot. So Marijuana Majority in that website is actually since been taken down, but I took screenshots beforehand. But Shailene Title was actually an advisor for Marijuana Majority. That's why she gets like nonstop, sound bites with Marijuana Moment. There's a very long-term relationship with that. So consumers, advocates, activists aren't hearing from all the voices. By the way, they're only hearing from a select few voices because the narrative is just that controlled. And so Marijuana Moment, and you see Benzinga is another one. They keep promoting each other, but these people they're the corporate cannabis rags, which is ironic because Shailene was, really pointed out that you were not, Caleb, corporate. And so that made me wonder, well, why would she even make that distinction? And therein lies the issue that we're dealing with. We have, a whole, it's just ironically, all the suits took over cannabis. And I used to be one. I've worked in corporate America. I'm a businesswoman. I don't have anything against business. I don't have anything against capitalism or any of this. What I'm watching, what I'm complaining about is corruption, is disingenuous.
I think you're right too, because like I never did nothing mean to that lady, and I've had a lot of guests that are her friends on my show. Grant Smith Ellis, Victoria Littman. I've had these guests on my show.
She will personally go after people who talk to me. If somebody gives me a soundbite, she will actually contact people, and she's the one who's slandering me. I mean, if we were really to bring this out, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
You're not the only person she's reached out to, and I've actually called her out on this. Like, why? She can't call, she can't email me and say, hey, this is who I really am. Why not work together? Instead, she literally individually takes time out of her day to contact people who talk to me, to slander me, to turn them against me.
All right, Larisa. Yo, I'm gonna get out of here. I got a bunch of comments here.
Yeah.
Yo, I would like to hang on before I get out of here. Rodney, I've had my own experience with Grant. I think he's talking about Grant Smith Ellis.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna bring us both up to the same level now.
Hey, Caleb.
And I want to thank you for being here, Larisa.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I love talking to you every time.
Likewise. I feel like we never have enough time.
But that's okay. We're gonna have enough time. One day I'm gonna come see you. We're gonna have hugs. It's gonna be a great day. But until then, the last word is always for you. I'm gonna leave you up there in the big corner. Anything you have to say, shameless plugs, shout outs, or anything we missed, now is the time. Thank you for being here with me, Larisa. Yeah. It's a pleasure. I always love talking to you. And the last word is for you. Yeah. Go right ahead.
Caleb. I appreciate that. Well, anybody can reach me I'm on Facebook, Larisa Bolivar, Twitter, Larisa Bolivar, LinkedIn, Larisa Bolivar. I am a consultant in the space. I've operated dispensaries, I've operated grows, I do compliance. So if you need help in that arena, definitely keep me in mind. Mostly I'm here to educate people and make sure that we actually do have a free market that everybody can participate. If you care to join me in that voice, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm definitely looking for more people to join this community so that we can start increasing our voice.
Yep. And here I go. I'm gonna pull myself up. Larisa Bolivar, thank you for joining me today. I always love talking to you. Yeah. My name is Caleb Teskey, and remember, the devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print.